I'm Matthew Murphy, and I am a commercial theater photographer. As a commercial theater photographer, my job is to help to market the show. I come in to create images for everything from photos of the actual show to key art photography, which is the image that you think of as the poster or as the CD cover in advertisements. Basically, I'm there to help get butts into seats by selling tickets, by enticing the viewer with some amazing images. The process for creating images for a show can vary wildly by the show and also by the different types of photography that I do. So taking production photography as an example, that's something that actually happens as the show is in the theater. I usually am called in for the final dress rehearsal or hopefully a couple of dress rehearsals before that so that I can get a feel for the show and I can get as much variety as possible, because depending on where the ads are going to be placed and where the images are going to be used, you might need a different ad for a banner on a website than you need for a full double page spread in the New York Times. So I try and get in and see the show in the rehearsal space first and foremost, because I like to get a feel for it as best I can before I'm actually in the theater shooting it. And from there, I make some notes for myself about what the images are that I know that I need to capture. There's always the essential things of we have to get great shots of each of the principals, great shots that show off the set, great shots that show off the costume and the movement and all of these different aspects that are gonna help sell the show. And so I'll take notes for myself and make sure that when I go in for the actual shoot, I've got that in mind. In addition, I'm usually talking with producers and ad agencies and marketing teams to see if there are any really specific needs. For a certain show, like something like Moulin Rouge, we might know that we need this huge picture of the set with all of the can-can dancers on there. And so I make a note for myself and I make sure that as the actual shoot is happening, I'm getting as much coverage of that as possible. Another thing that happens with production photography is that we do something that's called a setup call. So for a big musical, the chances are that I'm not going to be able to capture everything within the dress rehearsal. Or you might get times where people's faces don't look as good as their bodies look, or vice versa. And so you want to make sure that everything that's being put forward is as polished as possible. I love to keep the energy of the shots really high and feel as kind of spontaneous as possible, but sometimes we do something called a setup call where I get in and I have more control. I have more control over the lighting. I have more control over positions of the actors and the placement on the stage, and we can really, really finesse exactly how it's going to look and make sure that every single aspect is as fine-tuned as possible. So key art photography is an entirely different beast and something that is usually years in the making. It starts with different ad agencies pitching to potential shows some concepts for how they're going to market the brand of the show, either to Broadway or on tour or worldwide, and kind of looking at the full life and the full brand of the show. From there, they're going to do research whether they want to decide to go with a graphic or with just text, or if they want to bring in a photographer to create an image for the actual brand. So by the time I get brought into the process, it's usually, a couple of weeks or maybe a month or a little bit longer before we actually take the image for the poster. And sometimes it's a really, really clear concept of what we're doing, and we go into the room and we know exactly what we're trying to get. And other times there's a bit more flexibility and I'm left to kind of interpret the needs of the client and figure out the way to create as much diverse imagery for all of the different usages that we might have down the line. It really depends on project to project how much control I actually have with regard to what the images are. With something like production photography, it can be really kind of exploratory, and I can really discover the kind of signature images for a show as I'm photographing it for the first time. And for something like key art, with the poster for a show, we usually have a lot of people on set, a lot more people involved, and there's usually a huge kind of like years-long process to get us to the point of the actual shoot. So by the time we're actually in the room on key art shoots, a lot of times we know kind of exactly the poses that we need, exactly where the placement will be, and we are really fine-tuning some pre-approved ideas. With production photography, the first time around especially, you have the opportunity to shoot the show in a dress rehearsal form, and I'm usually just running around like a madman, and I am getting as much coverage as possible in that 2-hour, 2.5-hour time. And from there, we go through a whole process where there are photos that are approved by actors, approved by producers, by press teams, by advertising teams. All of these different eyes are on the images and, quote unquote, approve them. So many different eyes approve them. So that first round of production images are usually the most spontaneous, and then as a show goes longer into its run, or if it has different productions that open either on tour in the States or internationally, then the kind of brand of the show has to be maintained. And so we're then recreating a lot of the original photos that were discovered spontaneously. And that's actually one of the biggest struggles, I think, and one of the biggest challenges as a production photographer is finding new things and also delivering what is needed and expected to maintain the brand. But I always make an effort with a shoot to always give them what they want and then show them something totally new and exciting. And that was actually something that Joan Marcus had told me that was one of her goals, and I was like, that is a great goal. And just to keep it fresh for myself, I always want to try to discover something new on each shoot. Part of the definition of commercial photography is that you are actually selling something, so that usually means that you are responsible to a lot of different departments with regard to what images are out there and how they are actually photographed. So you get to bring some of your creativity to it, but you're also having to have incredible collaborations with other creatives and make sure that everyone's vision is coming across. Then there are those occasional jobs where you are given like complete free rein to do what you want to do, and those can be so exciting and so rewarding. I was super lucky early on that the editor-in-chief of Broadway.com, Paul, he gave me the opportunity to create a series there called Gotta Dance, and that was something that I was really proud of because it showcased ensemble dancers, and as a former Corps de Ballet member, it was really important to me to shine a light on them. So he was amazing and basically just gave me like complete free rein to do whatever I wanted to do with those shoots, which was always thrilling. And then as my career progressed, there are a couple that come to mind where I really got to kind of play around and just explore with the actors. And the two that I remember the most are, I did a series of portraits of the Hadestown cast in the alleyway of the theater while they were in tech rehearsal. And we ended up doing those for Vanity Fair, and I basically had I think 10 minutes, I mean, not even 10 minutes. I think I basically had 5 minutes with each actor, and they were so excited to collaborate, and we just got to play and create these, what I hope were striking images for people. And then one of the other ones that was particularly close to my heart was when I got to create the image for Alex Brightman's reveal in Beetlejuice. And we did that in the lobby of the theater in DC, and the whole team on that show was kind of do what you want, and just here are a couple tiny parameters, but within those parameters, play around. And so I got to really play around with lighting and really play around with the mood of it all. And because Alex had always sung my husband Ryan's work, we had known each other for a long time, and it was just this kind of magical moment of us getting to be creative together, and I will really, really, really cherish that memory. It is really, really hard for me to pinpoint any one experience that is quote unquote the coolest of what I really feel lucky to say is a lot of really incredible experiences as a commercial photographer. And so the one that comes to mind that is kind of the thing that started everything for me is when I got to photograph Hairspray at the Hollywood Bowl. Oh, there's my puppy, little Tommy here. When I got to photograph Hairspray at the Hollywood Bowl, that was the thing that really jump-started my entire career. I had been working as a writer for a little while, and I had gotten the chance to interview Jerry Mitchell, and so I had his email, and I was in town in California while he was working on that, and I'd always been such a massive fan of the show, and I just decided to put myself out there, and this is why I always give this advice to people. I literally put myself out there, and I emailed him and I said, hey, I'm in town. I'm not sure if you remember me. I photographed Broadway bears a few times, but I would love to come and photograph Hairspray if you need somebody, and if not, no worries. It's not a big deal. Like, I'd love to just stop by and do it if you want some extra photos. And I kid you not, it was like probably 2 hours later, he emailed back and said, come to the stage door tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We're doing the dress rehearsal, full out. It'll be great. And so I went, and I just remember walking into, I was with my husband Ryan's family, and his parents actually drove me to the Hollywood Bowl because I, to this day, still do not have a driver's license. I've never had a driver's license. And so Sherry and Scott, they took me, and we almost didn't make it. The traffic was really bad. And I remember going oh, we could turn back, it's not, I'm doing this, we could turn back, but or we could not make it. I don't know what my brain was thinking. I was just oh, maybe it's not gonna happen. And I remember Sherry and Scott were we're gonna get there. This is an exciting opportunity. We're gonna make it happen. And I went in, and I literally, Jerry opened the stage door, and I was holy crap, what is this experience right now? And we went into the Hollywood Bowl, and it was totally empty. And the Hollywood Bowl is massive. I don't even know how many seats it is, but it is enormous. And I was just one of maybe 15 people in the audience at that point. And he said, free reign, go do your thing, take whatever photos you want. And I just could not believe that he was giving me this opportunity, and I just knew that I wanted to do a really good job. And it was the entire original cast, or a bunch of the original cast, and they were I had seen them back at the Neil Simon when they were first in previews, and so kind of every single bit of that experience when I look back on it is mind-blowing. But the craziest part of it was, at the end of it, I emailed Jerry the photos, and I just said, thank you so much, this was such an incredible opportunity. And he was really sweet and sent a really nice note that was I love the photos, hopefully we'll get to work together in the future. And about a year and a half later, I think, I'm maybe messing up the timeline a little bit, but he emailed me and he said, hey, I'm working on a new show and I would love to try to get you as the production photographer. And so my brain already exploded. I was what are you saying? What are you talking about? You want to get me to be a production photographer on a Broadway show? And he said, yeah, it's called Kinky Boots, and I just need to get the producers and the press team and everyone to kind of sign off on you, and hopefully we can make it happen, and you could come to Chicago. And so that became, Kinky Boots became this massive, massive, massive show that was my first Broadway show I ever photographed. And I was, looking back, I had no idea a lot of things. I have no idea about a lot of things at that point, but I had this incredible group of people, the producers, Daryl and Hal, gave me such an amazing opportunity, and the press team with Rick and Molly and everyone, it was everybody just gave me a chance. And that all came from me just asking to be involved and asking to come and take photos. And so I think if I was being totally honest with myself, the coolest experience, this is all really long-winded way of saying, the coolest experience that I have, one of the coolest experiences that I've had was that very first time that I ever got to photograph a massive production like that, which was Hairspray at the Hollywood Bowl. And I am endlessly thankful to that entire team for giving me the opportunity to photograph Kinky Boots. It completely changed my life. This is a great question, and it really depends on the type of shoot and the day and if I've had enough coffee and all of these different factors, or if I've had too much coffee for that matter. But I think that what makes me the most anxious on a shoot is also what makes me the most excited, which is the kind of unknown nature of so much of it. Especially with production photography, there is a certain amount of kind of butterflies that happen before the shoot because you're out of control of so many factors that you really just get to kind of go on the ride of the show and see it through the lens and get as much kind of exciting imagery as you can in the allotted time, and you don't get to go back and do it again. You have one shot at it, and so that is definitely anxiety provoking, but also really kind of a fun adrenaline rush that I really miss right now, and I cannot wait to be back in the theater and having those butterflies again. You know, I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and something that a lot of people don't know about me is that before I was a theater photographer, I was actually a professional ballet dancer. So I had moved to New York to work with American Ballet Theater and had been doing that for about 5 years, and my interest in photography was relatively minimal. You know, I had a blog that I loved that I took a lot of photos for as we were traveling, but other than that, photography wasn't really a focus of mine. And it wasn't until I was 22 and I had this health crisis where basically I was dealing with something called chronic Epstein-Barr virus, and that was, you know, basically like chronic mono. And so understandably that kind of took me out from dancing for about 2 years. And it was during that time that I was like, I need something to do with my creative brain and something to do that will keep me feeling excited and energized. So I just ordered a camera on Amazon. I kind of spent my last little bit of savings, and I can't even to this day really tell you why I did it, except for that I wanted something to do with my time. And ABT was incredible, and they kept me employed for a lot of that time, and they allowed me to come in and take photos of as many rehearsals as I wanted to. And so I really learned by photographing dancers, which is an incredible way to practice because it's really difficult and requires you to get a really quick grasp on the settings involved with photography. And from there, you know, I basically just followed kind of any open door that I could find, and basically emailed people and asked to photograph their rehearsals or their performances, and just tried to gain traction and build my portfolio. This is another question that I get asked somewhat frequently, and it's always tough because a lot of times the memories that pop to mind are the ones where people were a little bit more difficult, and I'm definitely not going to name any names there, but you know, I think one of the people that sticks out as the absolute nicest people I have ever worked with was when I worked with Brendan Urie on Kinky Boots, and he had taken over the role of Charlie, and we got to shoot him for the key art shoot, and he was just like the most generous, most charming, most giving with his time, and just really incredible to work with, and could not have been cooler, and I feel very lucky that we got to collaborate on that. I have so many things that come to mind when this question popped up. You know, I think being a total theater fan from birth, I think a lot of times the stuff that hits my heart the most are things that really call back to my childhood. And so for me, there's something about the coffee table books that I've gotten to be a part of, and you know, at this point, I've done the Hamilton coffee table book, the Dear Evan Hansen coffee table book, Come From Away, and then the most recent one is the Jagged Little Pill book that just came out. And something about, you know, especially in a digital age, there's something that you just cannot trade about seeing your photos actually printed out, and especially printed in such a beautiful way. I was a kid who grew up in Montana, and my only way to see a lot of theater most of the time was through books like the Rent book, and I just devoured that. I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours and hours just looking through those photos because I knew that I wanted to do something involved in the arts someday. So the fact that those books could be anyone's window into theater and prompt the little spark that will make them a collaborative part of this community is something that I feel so unbelievably lucky to be a part of. One of the things that I definitely did not anticipate when I first got into this career was how much I would have the opportunity to travel for production photography. And so there are a handful of places that come to mind for me that were, you know, just the most incredible experiences. One is Melbourne, Australia, and I was just in love with that entire city. Another one is London, and I will never get tired of going to London. It just is the best vibe and the coolest place, and you know, getting to photograph a bunch of Cameron Mackintosh's shows over there has been really incredible. And the other one that is particularly random but wonderful was I got to go to Stockholm one time, and the best part about it was, other than the city just being really kick-ass and awesome, was I got to stay in the ABBA hotel, which is, you know, as it sounds, themed around ABBA. And at breakfast you go down and they're like playing Dancing Queen, and there are busloads of people coming in to go to the ABBA museum that is a couple floors down. And as someone who has always been obsessed with Mamma Mia and ABBA, that was just the kind of campiest, most incredible travel experience that I've had so far. I think if I had to pinpoint one piece of advice to give to aspiring photographers, or to kind of anybody working in this industry, or wanting to work in this industry, is just be kind. You know, it is such a small world, and you never know how your paths are going to cross with people again. And so just be generous and kind with everyone that you come into contact with. I find that it just yields the most exciting results, and isn't it just more enjoyable when everybody's nice? It just, for me it is. So be nice. That's the best piece of advice I can give. Well, I hope today was informative and that you learned a little something about commercial theater photography. It's been my pleasure to share my story, and I am more than happy to answer any follow-up questions that you might have. Feel free to reach out on social media at MurphyMade. Thanks for watching.